So, hello, welcome to Real Conversations. I'm your host, Austin Buzzard. You just call me Buzz. And we're here today with Nicolas Villarreal. And you're the creative mind behind the movie film On Slash Off. And if you want to go ahead and just kind of give us a brief background of your history of filmmaking, animating, whatever the case may be.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you for having me. I'm originally from Argentina. I live in San Francisco, and I moved here 23 years ago when I was 20 years old to my master's in traditional animation and fine art painting, something I love as well. And after that, I stayed in the US and I started working for smaller studios until Disney hired me as a character designer. And I spent there around like a year and a half. And then I moved to the academy where I taught, where I took classes to teach, something that I still do today. I love teaching. I'm the director of visual development and traditional animation, and teaching as well as animating. They're both of my passions. And when I started teaching in the school, I worked for several companies doing designs. I still do, but I focus more on my films today. I work for Sega, Sony, Digital Domain, Jim Henson, and I started doing my animation of my first film, Pasteurized, in 2008 or 9. It took me 27 months to that. And after that, I continued doing films, and On Off is my latest animated film. It's my fifth film, my fourth film in animation. And it's currently in film festivals, and thankfully, it's doing very well, and I hope it continues in that direction.
Yeah, after I watched it, I was pretty impressed. I've really enjoyed your film. But what inspired you to make the idea? What made you think this is what you want to do?
Um, I think attitude is what differentiates one person from the other one when they have to approach something. Is that non-stop or sheer will that they have to to follow something. And today we live in the time that following your dreams is something kind of like cliche. And everyone says to follow your dreams, which is great, but it doesn't work if you don't act upon it. And I always had this idea of what would happen if Da Vinci, Frida Kahlo, Tesla, Beethoven, and a bunch of other people that I admire that I couldn't put in the film because there were too many, would have access to the technology we have today, and how would they use it? And if the counterparts will be today, how would they use that too? And I've been looking at it, either when I teach or when I'm on Mune in San Francisco, or even in the street or in meetings, how people would use the technology. And I would see people like they're using it, which is not bad for playing video games or for, I don't know, reading articles. Um, but that triggered the idea of what would happen, how would they react? And every time I say this, I don't want to say too much because if anyone wants to see the film, I don't want to give it away. But I'll give you this example. One time I was teaching a class a long time ago, and it was the time that it was like 10 years ago. So I was teaching the class, and I saw that I have someone in my class that wasn't a student, but it was someone that was witnessing the class that kept fiddling with his phone, and I didn't say anything. And I remember I walked by, and thank God I didn't say anything, because when I walked by, he was taking notes of the class.
Yeah,
And I remember I felt terrible because I thought I had this prejudice. I instantly assumed that they were, I don't know, on social media or playing something, but he was actually taking notes. And then I tell my students when I teach, we draw and we have 5-minute breaks between the poses. And I tell them, in those 5-minute breaks, don't go on Facebook, just keep drawing. Some of them get them, some of them just goes over their head. Um, and I remember I don't say anything. I just walk around, and I saw one student that she kept fiddling with her phone. And when I looked, she was looking at reference of other artists. And I thought this is great, because she had a 5-minute break and she was trying looking for inspiration and more reference. But the message that the film sends, that I'm hoping to send, because when when you create a film, and this a friend of mine told me one time, the moment you create something, it's a film or a painting, specifically more a film, it doesn't belong to you anymore, and everyone will decode it, because all of us, we have different emotional baggage and history. So you'll see things that other people won't see, and you'll feel things that other people won't, and everyone is different. So, but to me, the message that the film is that it's the relationship between technology, attitude, and the passion that you want to follow, and hopefully it will make people think that if they're sacrificing something great that they could be doing in their back of their head with some ephemeral like actions that you do with technology.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like that. Like, I know exactly what you're coming from. Like some like technology can be this incredible tool. Like right now, like that's the only reason why we're able to do this, you know?
I mean, you send me an email and we are like connecting miles away.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
We can also be just totally distracting. Like I'm in college and I see it all the time. I'll even say it's like distracting to me sometimes too, but it's crazy.
It's distracting to everyone.
Yeah.
And to me, like, I don't know, sometimes I'm watching something, I pick up my phone to see if I receive an email. I'm thinking, I made a film about this.
Yeah, it's like it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
So good. But you mentioned some of the characters in the film. What made you choose like Beethoven, Da Vinci, and I think like Steve Jobs? Was that like a reference to him? Like, what made you choose those specific characters?
That's a little cameo in the film.
Nice.
And if you, it's even though he's in the center of the screen, in animation we have what we call in painting as well the focal point. The focal point is the highest contrast between light and dark, and the sharpest contrast between light and dark with color as well. So if you look at a screen, in movies, they light up the scene like they light up in the theater with a spotlight on the actress or the actor. In movie making, we do the same. In that particular shot, the spot, the light, the highest contrast is on the screen because we have Tesla. So your eye goes straight right there. But if you, and the shot is probably 2 seconds, 3 seconds at the most. It's just to get, and the message of the shot is you have Tesla on the screen, and then the counterpart of Tesla today taking notes, and the light starts blinking. And so Steve Jobs is the third reading, and either you catch it or you don't. It's not important if you don't catch it, but I love that you did.
Yeah. So I just thought it was cool. What made you like choose those like big heavy hitter, like super creative people?
Because it's all of them are people that I admire a certain extent from one reason or the other one, and reading about them and watching documentaries, the level of focus that they have to pursue their passion, it was uncanny. And like many other either artists, scientists, athletes, professionals, but I needed to find iconic people that they would be easily recognized because of the style. The style is very, very, very abstract. I did like a kind of like a pop deco art, like cubism. So I had two challenges. Number one, I had to make sure that the characters were identified in this abstraction as these people. And number two, that if this abstraction was successful, the audience had to identify them. Because if let's say I would have made a successful drawing of some character that, and I ran into names that they were, the name was stronger than the actual visual image of them. Like Marie Curie, right?
I'm sorry, I don't know who that is.
Marie Curie, it was a chemist, Nobel Prize, and her name is extremely famous, but there are no pictures of her. So if I would have used her, and it happened with other scientist or artist that I was looking for, Klimt, Gustav Klimt. Gustav Klimt is one of my favorite artists, and the artist that started Art Nouveau at the end of the 1800s. If you know who he is. You've seen his paintings over and over, and his name too. But there are, I think, 3 pictures of him. So if I would have used him, and even though if I would have made a successful drawing, the audience wouldn't have connected, and then you lose the audience. So it doesn't work with the story, and the story is crucial here. So this is something I learned working in films, of making films. If you don't support the story to get the point across, and the audience will not get it, it's not going to work. And then you lose the audience, because if you have a chain of shots, right? And if one shot or two shots are confusing, then you keep thinking about the shot, and the movie keeps going. You don't pause it. So those were the challenges. And when I did it, the reason I have Einstein as well, one of the possible characters. But I felt like I was covering science with Tesla.
Yeah, and I really like that too, how like you had not just like only scientists, but like anything that's like creative in any way. Like you got kind of all the categories there.
So we have music, science, we have art, I guess architecture or science. Da Vinci is kind of a jack of all trades. So with Frida, we have art, with Tesla science, with Beethoven music, and when Da Vinci, his counterpart is an engineer, and Da Vinci is building one of his prototypes.
And you'd mentioned earlier like the character design and like the art style that you chose. So like I just thought it was super interesting how like a lot of the faces and stuff like didn't really look like faces, but then you added like different colors and different shapes, and it was like, oh, that like you can recognize like that's Einstein or whoever. So you can like elaborate any on like why you chose that type of character design?
Because in this one, I did two murals in San Francisco, one of Frida and the other one of Spock. And I love the level of abstraction. And in this film, the most important part was, well, in all of them, but the message. If you notice, there's not too much animation. I mean, it's animated, but there's not something crazy. If you look at my first film, Pasteurized, the animation is more like traditional animation from Disney, with art and very smooth and flowing. This one, it's more graphic, and I thought I wanted to create a level of abstraction with the design and with the story. If you look at some of the designs, they don't have bodies, or they don't have necks, or they don't have, and it works because as long as it works. And that's something, it's a fun exercise as a character designer, is with how much you can get away removing if the design works. There's a quote by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is one of my favorite. He wrote The Little Prince, and he was a soldier. He was a poet. He was an illustrator, and he has this quote that I constantly think about. It says, "A designer knows he has achieved perfection, not when there is nothing left to remove, to add. Not when there is nothing left to add, but nothing else to take away." So when you start removing something, you keep removing. And I do this with all my designs. I keep removing things, and at one point I remove something, and the design falls apart. And that's what I know, that's the highest level of pushing that I can take a design before it breaks.
Nice. That's awesome. That's such a cool, like I've never even thought of that. Like it's not what you can add to it, but how much can you take away?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And now something else which I thought was very interesting is you didn't use any words to like progress the story. Is that something like you do frequently, or is that just something that you chose for this one? Like, why did you choose to not have any dialogue in the film?
I love that the films that, I mean, I will say I am a huge fan. I grew up with Chuck Jones, Looney Tunes. I grew up with short films from Disney as well, and they didn't have any dialogue, and you couldn't understand everything. It's much harder, way much harder. But I remember there's an interview with Chuck Jones that he would say that he would get on a plane and play a movie without the headphones. And if he would understand the movie without the sound, he does for the headphones and continue watching the movie. And if he didn't, he would just switch to another one. And it's, I compare it when to take something, if you can show it, like the film worked with no sound or no music, it worked. And then when you add the sound, it brings the film to a different level. And when you add the music, it brings the thing to a different level. So this film, if I would have added some words, maybe it would have helped, but I wouldn't need it. I did 4 films in animation. 3 of them, they don't have any words. It's called pantomime. The third one that I did, the House of Colors, he has a voiceover. That one we needed because there was some information that we I we I was going to make the film much longer if I would add some information. And I like the fact that what the narrator was saying, it was different from the visuals, so it was helping.
Nice. Yeah, that's always found something super interesting is like how some people, because like you said, like if you don't understand what's going on and you can like not hear it, then you're like, if you understand what's going on without hearing it, you're doing good.
Yeah,
And that's something like you definitely
one of the
got that from your film.
one of the things I don't like in films is exposition. Exposition is when they tell you what's happening, they're not showing you.
Right.
I believe in showing. You can have a little exposition here and there, but it needs to be done very, how can I say this, artfully. Because if not, you have someone telling you, and it's much more interesting to see what's happening than someone telling you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like when I'm like in like school trying to learn anything, it's like I'd much rather somebody show me like what that means
Right.
instead of just get up there and talk to me.
That's right.
So yeah, is there like, those are all the questions that I have for you. Is there anything else that you want to add about the film or your process or anything along those lines?
No, not really. I mean, I hope they can watch the film. I do hope they like the film. That's beyond our hands. The only thing that I will tell the audience is that what they see on the screen is the absolute best that we could do. So if they don't like it, I think that we did our best. And I hope they leave the movie theater thinking, "God, I hope I didn't lose. I hope I just didn't lose 7 minutes of my life."
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you. This is my first interview, so
You did great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for letting me do this. And I think that'll conclude it.
All right. Good luck with the rest of the interviews, and it was a pleasure being here, Austin.
Awesome. Thank you so much.